one of my best memories with Teddy is I was over up the road helping the lady that lives next door, and I had brought some wood over to the house, and I was headed back down through the property that goes around by their property, and my truck slid off the road, and luckily Mark was right there available, and went over, and they came over, and Teddy helped him bring the tractor down, and he looked and he says, "Dad, isn't this the third time we've helped them get something out?" And it just, in a situation where you're stuck on the side of the road, you're like, yeah, this is. Thanks, Teddy. So.
I'm Mark's little brother, Mike. So every year, my family, my brothers and I, we come back over here to Coos Bay for our pigeon pilgrimage. We come over here and do some band-tailed pigeon hunting. And this last year, Teddy got to go with us. So my story is kind of about him being inquisitive. So we were all in our tent still, and we heard his ride show up. And the next thing I heard was this little zzz of my tent unzipping. And I didn't think much of it until I kind of peeked up and looked, and there was this cute little boy standing there with a lunch bag in one hand and a shotgun in the other, and his words to me were, "Hey, hey, hey, get up. Hey, hey, hey." So I'm like, "Hey, go bug somebody else." The next thing I heard was the next tent. Zzz. So he proceeded to get us all up and chase us around, and so then we went pigeon hunting, and Manny, my nephew, he set his camera up to film him for a minute, and it was a time lapse. And all you saw was Teddy, after we watched it later that night, he just was bouncing around. He's just bouncing off the walls. Because every person that was at a station hunting, he would show up and go, "Hey, hey, what have you got? What do you got?" And then Mark is kind enough to take us all fishing every year also. And when you think back on it, his inquisitive nature, he would run around that boat and do the same thing. "Hey, hey, what do you guys got? What do you guys got?" So that beautiful little inquisitive nature is, something we're all going to miss around camp. And I know it just would have got more and more for us, and we're really going to miss him. He was a beautiful little boy. So I'm sorry.
I'm Jacob. I am one of Teddy's friends from church. The first year we went to Camp Faircroft. Our counselor and junior counselor, we did a few pranks on him. Like, one of them would be, we all came back for break time from one of our stations, and we put a water bottle on the door, and as soon as they opened it up, they got all wet from it, and the water had splashed on them. And then we put rocks under their bunks, in their sleeping bags. It was time to go to sleep. And Teddy, when we were there, he'd always follow me around. He'd do a lot of things I'd like to do. Every time he'd always, we were doing something, he'd be like, "Can I help? Can I play?" He'd always follow me. He'd be like, "Hey, you want to go play this with me? You want to go do this with me?" It was funny. He was really fun, too. And at church, we'd always come up with cool things to do. Found this little hangout spot that we'd just go to a lot of the time. And it was really fun being with him.
I'm one of the counselors that those kids got to torment. I only got to know Teddy 8 days of his life, really. 2 years of counseling. First year with Tyler Long, and the second year I was with Andy. And Teddy was an awesome kid. He definitely had a heart for the Lord, a real theological mind. I would stare at this kid and just wonder, what is God going to do with this guy? Just thinking of imagining the possibilities. And well, I can tell you he's fruit in the lives of many here now. But I know even though he was a super straight shooter, he also had a fun side. And probably about the biggest story I think was developed this last summer was what we had come to know as the Underwars. during this session at camp, we heard a knock at our door. Life innocently went up to the door and opened it, and in came this stick with some underwear on it. Needless to say, life was violated, but then the war was on. Our cabin then proceeded to go out, and I'm not super sure who came back with the flag. I thought it was Teddy. I'm not really sure on that, but somebody came back with the other cabin's flag. And so, needless to say, we ended up having their flag. Well, I thought in my mind, well, let's get our flag off the porch, because all the cabins had flags, so that they don't take our flag. And then kind of in the malice of my own mind, okay, they came back in looking for our flag. I'm like, uh-oh, they must have taken it. So needless to say, they went back over, and the war was on again, back and forth, who's got the flag? But it was just a beautiful, fun time that these kids just had, just really interacting. Finally, we dropped the flag out the back window and said, oh, search for it. Maybe somebody dropped it out there somewhere. So finally they found the flag, and the war was over. But they were great kids, and Teddy was definitely a leader in a lot of respects, and just a sound mind for God.
I met Mark and his family somewhere around 08, 07, something. I repair his equipment. Went over to his house to work on something, and there's this little kid, like a raccoon, climbing across the logs, watching me. And I look at him. I love children. I look at him, and boom, he will not look at me. But he won't leave. So I go back to working, and he studies everything I'm doing. And you look at him, he's not going to look at me, just like that. Won't look at me. But he won't leave. So, as you know, that was one moment where I met him. And you can go ahead, quickly to like a year ago. I go over there. I'm going to change oil on Mark's Traco. And I take a handful of tools, and comes to find out that the drain plug is all messed up. And I brought wrenches, but I didn't bring a big vice grip. And Teddy's right there watching me. And without me even telling him that I was short on something, he's telling me what I need. So he goes down, digs through Mark's stuff, comes back with 3 different choices. Well, that was my raccoon when he was a little kid. And the last thing I have to say on this, one day Mark's got Teddy, comes over to my shop. We've got something wrong that we're fighting with, and I'm trying to fix. And Teddy's right there, and one thing he loves to do is I have a crane that's a chain hoist, big chain hoist, 14 foot in the air. He stands in the hook, and he runs himself to the ceiling. And you tell him, hey, just don't lose your fingers. But you don't tell him no. So he goes up and down, never gets hurt. So somewhere in the course of that day, when we're troubled with something, I let go a 4-letter word. And I don't do it much around Mark anyhow, but it wasn't a good day. And I realized that Teddy was there. And I turned to Teddy and I said, you're a man. I didn't realize there was a child here because there isn't. You're a man. I'm sorry I used a 4-letter word. It doesn't make a man any more of a man, but I didn't see a child here. And I apologize for the 4-letter word, but you are a man. And I just did not feel a child. And so my mouth opened and out it came, and I'm apologizing. But to me, you're a young man. And so there he is. That's my stair steps with him. And I miss him. I have a hard time with this.
I have a lot of memories with Teddy. I can't say which one is the best. I've known that little boy since he was born, the whole family. He was a great kid. I spent many, many hours, long days, babysitting him and his brother and his second youngest sister. Didn't get to spend much time with Elsa after she was born, but the 3 of them. For a short time, I lived with them, and it's the first time in my life that I lived with a family. They showed me so much. Just how to love and care for each other. They're a great family. I love them like my own. I was pregnant and had my own kid, and the last few years we've kind of separated, got busy with our own lives, and hadn't seen them in a year or 2. And then just a month or so ago at Camp Burcroft, I went to pick up my son from camp, and ran into Adela, who was there with the girls picking up Teddy and Life. And the boys didn't remember each other until we introduced them again. And right away they remembered and got to carrying on, playing, and all of us, it was like we were never a day apart. We just picked up right where we left off. Teddy was a very special little boy. I just can't help but to think that he was so special that God needed him there.
So I had the good fortune to be able to help write a lot of watershed restoration grants. And a lot of those projects, Mark Villers implemented the work. I see a lot of people here from the watershed restoration community, and Mark and his family have definitely made a positive impact on us. One of the reasons we like to work with Mark is he has this calm intensity in his eye. I've only ever seen it one other place, and that's in Teddy's eyes. Teddy loved to be with his dad, and he loved to work. Some of my favorite memories of Teddy are when things get fouled on the job site. You have to come up with plan B, and Teddy would say, "Well, why'd you do that?" So I think, I just want to say that how much I appreciate all the effort and sacrifices that the Villers have made. And I would argue that his family has sacrificed more for watershed restoration than anyone. Thank you.
One of the last times I was with Teddy, he took a long time to decide on what he wanted to pray for in children's Bible study. And that's exactly what he prayed for, was Daddy's work, the fires and everything. And I just remember thinking that was just amazing. And he was just an amazing little boy in so many ways, but it just seemed to kind of go along with what he said, and hearing he was just so involved with Daddy's work, and just such a great kid. And for those of you who don't know, he loved my son so much, baby Will. And so I apologize if he's disturbing anybody, but it just didn't seem right not to bring him. And he's been a good boy all morning, but he's getting a little bit talkative. But he looked up there, and he does remember Teddy. I know he's young, but he was just an amazing little boy, and we love him.
I just had a couple of firsts with Teddy I wanted to share, and an interesting last as well. Mark and I took Teddy on his first waterfowl hunt when he was 2 years old down at Bob Ross's dairy. We had him in a decoy sled to try to keep him dry. It was kind of iced up and a little bit of water standing around. And as we were toting him back to the truck, he tipped over in the decoy sled and got a bit damp and was iced up on the way back. And he was a great kid. He didn't cry or carry on or nothing until he got in the truck and was starting to warm up. And then he was definitely cold and wanted us to know about it. So that was a good memory. And then the other really good memory I have is Mark had taken Teddy out for a pigeon hunt, and they had gotten a pigeon, and then he came down to our place and band and got him offshore, rock fishing for black rockfish. And if I remember right, Teddy caught his first fish on the boat when we went out that day, and that also happened to be the last day I fished with my father before he passed away. So that was an interesting first and last for us.
It's a camp counselor at Camp Furcroft. That's where I got to know Teddy. So all of our times were lots of fun. And when I first heard about Teddy passing, first thing that really came to mind is I was I'm excited about when I get to heaven. I'm going to have a guide who's going to know it. He's so inquisitive, and the Bible says a lot about knowledge. how a wise mind seeks a proverb about turning your ear to wisdom. And that was Teddy. I mean, the kid had more questions than any kid I've ever seen. And asking me questions at camp, assuming that I knew the answer. I was appreciative that he thought more. He thought I was smarter than I actually am. So. But I really enjoyed a lot of time with Teddy and life and the rest of those boys. And I'm excited to have a guide, another guide, when I get to heaven. So.
I just wanted to add to what Teresa said about the last day we had him in Sunday school. So I don't usually teach Sunday school, I just help. And my niece always teaches pretty much every week since Gary and Elizabeth left. Teddy's very particular. He didn't really enjoy it when Vicky didn't come to church. He didn't really like it when I didn't do things just like Vicky, and he made it well known. He would stop me mid-song and say those were not the right words. These are the words. And I asked that day for prayer requests, and Teddy said, Vicky doesn't do that. She only asked for praises. And I said, well, today we're going to ask for prayer requests too. And Teddy had the best one. So I thought that was really appropriate.